Hi everybody, I'm Jaime K and welcome to this episode of Save the Kales. Today is our fall themed episode, so we are making football food. Now I don't know very much about sports, but I do know that football means football snacks. So we're gonna make a vegan beer and cheese soup and vegan buffalo wings with a sriracha apricot hot sauce. But first, join me here in this beautiful Pennsylvania apple orchard and pumpkin patch. Hi everybody, we're here at Grimm's Greenhouse and Farm Market in Briningsville, Pennsylvania, and I'm here with Josh. Josh is the owner. And Josh, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now, because they're in the middle of their fall festival. So what does that entail?
The fall festival is, we have a corn maze, we also have a pumpkin patch, pick your own pumpkins. There's a play corral where you can try tossing football, basketball, or baseballs through targets. Gigantic hay slide, gigantic sliding tube, and then we also do hay rides. That way you can get a view of everything we offer.
Look at these guys, aren't these beautiful? It's really amazing that all of these apples came from just little tiny apple seeds. It's kind of crazy how science works sometimes. But look at this, they're beautiful. You can make apple strudel, apple pie, apple crisp, so many things. So we're gonna grab a couple of these and get cooking. Eureka, I found it! Applesauce for everybody! Well, as everyone knows, it is not officially fall till you make a trip to a pumpkin patch. So here we are. There are so many pumpkins and little baby gourds all around us. We're gonna make some jack-o'-lanterns. We're gonna make some pumpkin pie, pumpkin pancakes. Things required in the fall are pumpkins, apples, cinnamon, cardigans, sweaters, and boots. And once you have all of those, then officially fall has begun. This one is in the shape of a square. This one has picky things and is still stuck to the vine. This one is dark green like a magical forest. This one is so heavy I can't pick it up. This one has a battle scar. Pie. So just for a minute, forget about movie theater popcorn and forget about delicious corn muffins. We are gonna go play in a corn maze. Let's go get lost. It feels kind of like we're in a creepy movie a little bit. And I think I'm also actually lost. We'll try over that way. Well, we finally made it out of the corn maze and I am done walking for right now. I think we're gonna take a hay ride. Well, you have a bunch of different varieties of apples and a bunch of different kinds of pumpkins and squashes. So what kind of things are you growing here?
There's over 20 different kinds of pumpkins, gourds, squashes, and as far as the apples, there will be over 25 different varieties. Customers will start picking Honeycrisp around the 5th of September most years.
Those are so good.
And then we'll end up with Gold Rush and Pink Lady in the beginning of November, and we'll have varieties in between there, so we should have a constant flow once the trees mature. And then in the market down there, we're baking fresh homemade apple pie, apple dumplings, pumpkin pie made on the premise right here with our own apples and stuff. We also are making apple cider donuts, fresh on weekends.
Nice.
And then apple cider slushies and pumpkin ice cream.
So Josh, thank you so much. I really appreciate you letting us get on your hayride, run around through your pumpkin patch. We had a lot of fun.
Great.
So make sure you check out grimsgreenhouse.com to learn all about the fun things they have here for you.
Would you like to advertise with us on Save the Kales? reach a television audience of more than 105,000 households and a huge online following. Maximize your ad potential for a much lower rate than you think. Call 610-435-1864 or email postsputnik@postsputnik.com to learn more about this great advertising opportunity.
Welcome back to Save the Kales. We're gonna get started on our vegan hot wings. And these are gonna be made out of seitan. Now, seitan, let me just explain what that is. First of all, it's spelled S-E-I-T-A-N. I know it sounds like something else, but it's actually wheat gluten. So if you have a gluten intolerance, you may wanna try this recipe using tofu instead. But wheat gluten is extremely low in fat, super high in protein. In fact, about 100 calories of wheat gluten has about 15 grams of protein. So it's really not terrible for you unless you had a gluten intolerance. But we're gonna get started, and I'm gonna use seitan today because the texture is really chewy and it kind of has a more like meaty, chickeny kind of texture for these hot wings. So it starts off like this, and this is actually the wheat gluten powder, and we're gonna make a kind of a dough. So there's about 2 cups of that, and you can find that in health food stores. And about 2 cups of water. And then I'm gonna add to that, just for a little bit of flavor, because this has no flavor at all until you start adding things to it, a little bit of a chicken seasoning. Now, chicken seasoning, a lot of them are just seasonings that you would put on chicken. It doesn't actually contain any kind of like chicken in it, but just read ingredients. And if you're unsure, you could always use like a powdered vegetable broth just to give it a little bit of flavor. All right, so once we have that, we're gonna mix through, and you will see that this immediately starts to turn into kind of like a dough. And that's exactly what we want. Okay, and once you have it in its dough ball, get your hands in there and really mix everything through and mix the seasoning through really well. And you can see that the texture, it is really squishy and certainly a different texture than something like a tofu. So this is really fun. And if you don't like hot wings, if you don't like spicy food, you'll be able to use this and make, you know, really any kind of sauce for it. You can put it with some pasta and marinara sauce. So this is just a really basic recipe. And you can also go crazy and start putting all kinds of spices in here and seasonings in here. All right, so that is pretty good. And mix through, we'll get the rest of that off the bottom. This is fun to play with. When I was in Girl Scouts, we had a field trip to the Auntie Anne's pretzel factory, and we got to make our own pretzels, and that was one of the greatest moments of my life because I always wanted to play with the dough. So you can live out your dreams too when you make these. All right, so now that we have the dough, because we're doing these kind of like buffalo wing bites, we're gonna take it apart into little pieces. So this is just a pan with parchment paper. You don't need that. You can just put these on your counter, but for the sake of cleanliness, we're gonna rip a piece off and just start pulling these little pieces off with your hands and kind of squish them together. You want to make them a little smaller than you would make like a mini meatball if you were trying to make some kind of like a lentil balls or mini meatballs. Because what's gonna happen is as we cook them, they will expand to about 2 or 3 times their size. So you kind of want them to be almost a little too small because they will get bigger. And the smaller you make them, the more you can make, and then it looks like you have more food. So if you have a lot of people over your house to watch the football games, you'll be able to feed more people this way. And we're just gonna do that with the whole amount. And while you're doing this, you just wanna make sure that you have a great big pot of water boiling on the stove, because when we're done here, we're gonna add these to boiling water. So once your water has come to a boil, go over and drop these in, and drop them in individually. That's just so that they don't get next to each other too much and turn into one giant blob. So drop them into the boiling water and keep an eye on it, because they tend to rise and then the water tends to boil over the top. So just keep an eye, get rid of some water if you're noticing that it's going over the top. So let's go get these in the pot. All right, so our seitan chicken has been boiling on the stove for 30 minutes, and we drained it. And just make sure when you drain it, when you take it off the stove, that you kind of take another bowl or something and push the water out through it, because it's very spongy, so it has a lot of water in there. That'll help it cool off. So once it's cool enough to handle, you'll see it looks like this. It's in all these little pieces that we pulled apart. So right now what we're going to do is just bread that, and we're going to bake this. So at this point there's no oil in this at all. And I have here just some regular breadcrumbs. I guess that's about a cup, and this is maybe a half a cup of panko crumbs. Panko crumbs are those like Japanese breadcrumbs that are a little bit coarser, and that's just to give it some variety. You can use one or the other. I think using regular breadcrumbs definitely helps though, because it sticks on the pieces a little bit better because it's so fine. So we'll put them in there, and we're just going to throw a couple pieces in at a time and toss them around and get them coated and put them on our baking sheet. Make sure your oven is preheating at 350 degrees. And you're just going to put them on this baking sheet. It's okay if they touch a little bit. It's not really like cookies where they're going to blend together or anything like that. They hold their shape pretty well. And you can also, feel free to add some spices or herbs to this seasoning if you want. Something like shredded coconut would be really good in here. If you then wanted to fry them up, that would be pretty delicious. All right, so once you have all the pieces coated in breadcrumbs, you can go ahead and put this in the oven at 350 degrees for 25 minutes and take them out, and we'll be ready to cover them with sauce. So while our vegan chicken is cooking in the oven, we're gonna get started on our hot sauce. And this is a little bit of a twist from a typical buffalo wing sauce. We're going to use sriracha, which is one of my favorite hot sauces. You can find it pretty much any grocery store. It's an Asian hot sauce. And some vegan butter. So you can find all different kinds of vegan margarines. Use the one that you like the best. And add that to a saucepan. You're gonna add 1 cup. And we're also going to use some apricot preserves in this. So just find some kind of apricot preserves, whatever kind you like. We're going to add a half a cup of that to our saucepan. We'll get those in there. And a half a cup of that sriracha hot sauce. And I like this kind the best just because it's not too vinegary. It's a little thicker, it's a little spicier, it has really good flavor instead of just being hot. So that's what I'm using here. So that's a half cup of hot sauce. Now, if this is too much for you, if you don't want to have all of that margarine and oil, you can also use any kind of sauce you want. A store-bought buffalo sauce that's vegan, or a barbecue sauce, like anything. Go crazy, because this chicken, as I said, is going to have a very neutral flavor. The last thing we're going to add, though, to the sauce we're making is some arrowroot powder, and this is just the powder that's going to be used as a thickener. So instead of something like cornstarch, this is just a white powder that has no taste at all, and it's going to instead of the sauce being kind of watery, this is going to help give it a more gravy-like texture. So we're going to add that too. We're going to mix everything with a whisk as this is on the stove boiling. Well, our chicken is out of the oven and cooled, and our sauce is ready to go, so we're ready to plate this up. Now, one of the ways you can do it is just to put these pieces on a big platter, especially if you're a little wary about how spicy some people might like their food. You can put them on a platter like this and let people dip for themselves. And especially if you're having a football party or people over to watch a game, you can just lay out a whole bunch of different kinds of dips and sauces and let them go crazy. So put some of that in there. There we go. And that could be one platter. Another thing is you can get a mixing bowl and put some of the chicken in there and pour the sauce in and have it already covered. Stir everything through. Stir it gently. So remember, you have that breading on there. You don't want that to all come falling off. There we go. You can add those to a different plate. And I have to say, I think they look pretty convincing. I've done this before at parties, and people who weren't really thinking about the fact that all the food I make is vegan food didn't really realize that they weren't actually chicken until afterwards when we were talking about it. So I think that anybody that comes to your house is going to be really impressed with these vegan hot wings with sriracha apricot sauce.
Would you like to advertise with us on Save the Kales? Reach a television audience of more than 105,000 households and a huge online following. Maximize your ad potential for a much lower rate than you think. Call 610-435-1864 or email postsputnik@postsputnik.com to learn more about this great advertising opportunity.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Save the Kales kitchen. We are going to get started on our vegan beer and cheese soup. Oh yes, you heard that correctly. This soup is great because it's really creamy and it has no oil, no dairy, very minimal amount of soy from some miso that we're going to use, but you can even omit that if you want to. So it's actually really low fat and actually kind of healthy, full of vegetables. You would never know it. We're going to get started on the soup. We have some onion, potatoes, and carrots, and this is 2 of each. Average, medium size, yellow potato, a carrot, both potatoes and carrots peeled, and then just 2 white onions chopped up. And get them in a big soup pot. Now we're going to add 1 cup of water. So there's our 1 cup of water. You can use vegetable broth, but I like this vegetable broth paste a little bit better. So this is a teaspoon of that added to the 1 cup of water. That just has a lot better flavor. So I definitely recommend looking for it. And now here comes the star of the beer and cheese soup show, beer. So I'm going to use a dark lager and porter mix. We're going to use 1 cup of beer, but use whatever kind you like because you're going to be buying it, you're going to want to drink it. And if you're interested in what beers and wines are vegan, you can check out a website called barnivore.com, and that will tell you everything you need to know. So find one there that you like. Okay, we'll add 1 cup of this. And I think that the darker beers really give good flavor. It's getting a little foamy there, but that's all right. All right, so that's about 1 cup, which is going to be about 2/3 of a bottle. All right. And that dark caramely beer is going to give it some really good flavor. It's going to mix in really well, and we're going to cook this on the stove for about 10 or 15 minutes till all the vegetables are tender. So let's get that on the stove. Well, it's been about 10 or 15 minutes and our vegetables are tender and they've cooled a little bit. So we're going to get our blender out. And if you don't have a blender, you can use a food processor, but I will tell you, if you're using a food processor, maybe get a big giant bowl and put all of the ingredients in a separate bowl first, because they're not all going to fit in a food processor and you are not going to be able to make your soup. So you can just do it in 2 different batches if you need to. But we'll pour our broth with our veggies in, our beer broth. It already smells really good. Okay, then to help make this soup creamy, a lot of times if you don't want to use beans, you can use a silken tofu, but I have here white northern beans, and these have a really neutral taste, and we're going to blend these up with it, and that's going to give it that really silky, creamy texture with barely any fat and a lot of protein. So we have those. This is 2 cups of an unsweetened almond milk. I like almond milk because it's thicker than a rice milk or a soy milk. Just make sure it's unsweetened. This is not the time to use vanilla. And this is 2 tablespoons of white miso paste. So far, that's actually the only soy that we have in here. They also make miso paste out of chickpeas. So if you have a soy allergy and don't want to use soybean miso paste, you can use chickpea miso paste. And then the last thing, big surprise, nutritional yeast. So anytime you want to make something cheesy, use nutritional yeast. And we're going to use 2/3 of a cup. And put that in there too. And we are ready to go. We're gonna get this blended up. So start it low and make sure you have the top on again, because this is gonna take over the whole blender. All right. Okay, if you have any trouble blending, you can take the top off and stir it around a little bit, and if you need to, you can add a little more vegetable broth or a little more beer. And having a high-speed blender really helps because it really breaks everything down and make it really smooth. But as I said, if you have a food processor, just leave it in there, an extra 2 or 3 minutes. Once your soup is blended and smooth, you are actually done. So if it's still warm, you could serve it right away, or you can put this on the stove to heat it back up. But one way to serve this that's really nice is in a giant bread bowl. So go to your bakery or bakery counter and just read the ingredients, but a lot of big loaves like this are actually vegan and don't have eggs or milk in them. And carve out the middle with your hands and just pour it in there. And you can see this looks really thick and really creamy, super low fat. You can also put some on the side. If you have some soft pretzels, you can use this as a dip for your football game party, or you can just eat it right out of the bowl. So our beer and cheese soup is ready to go, and I know your guests are going to be so impressed and they're going to love it.
Would you like to advertise with us on Save the Kales? Reach a television audience of more than 105,000 households and a huge online following. Maximize your ad potential for a much lower rate than you think. Call 610-435-1864 or email postsputnik@postsputnik.com to learn more about this great advertising opportunity.
Hi everybody, welcome back to Save the Kales. I'm here with my friend Yvonne, and Yvonne is a dear, dear friend, a single mom. She also works for Via of the Lehigh Valley, which is a social service to help people with disabilities in our community. Yvonne, you have a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. So what I want to talk to you about first is how you got started in veganism, because you host punk shows at your house, right?
I do.
In the community. And why don't you tell us about the experience you had making breakfast for people who came to stay with you?
Sure. Well, one of the things that I like to do in addition to just like putting these shows on is I like to take it a step further and do a little bit more for the bands by hosting them so they can sleep in my house overnight, and I like to feed them a meal before they go to the next town.
Yeah, who doesn't want that?
Right? So the one morning I made a big spread of bacon and eggs and toast with butter and pancakes that had egg and milk in it, and I served it up to these guys, and they were vegan, and all they could do was drink the orange juice, and I felt like such a really crummy host. So from that point on, I learned how to cook vegan food, and that was like my intro to veganism. Like, I learned how easy it was to substitute and just to prepare these meals for these people, and I did it, and it did take another year for me to actually become vegan, but that was how it started.
Yeah, so you are also a mom, you have 2 beautiful little kids, and your kids are starting to eat more vegan now too, and you said part of what got you into this was also concern, as most parents are, concerned for their health. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, when I first had my kids, I nursed them, and then when they started eating solid foods, like everyone else, we were on a budget. And so when I went to the grocery store, I was more concerned about getting the most food that I could that would last the longest.
Which is not fresh vegetables and fruits all the time, right?
No, absolutely not. My pantry was full, my freezer was full, and my refrigerator and my dining room table was empty. And now my dining room table is full of fresh foods and from local farmers markets and things like that. But back then it wasn't. And I realized that that was probably not the healthiest thing for my family, and so I started buying more fresh foods, and now I buy local fresh foods from farmers markets. And since I became vegan, a lot of my family and friends have had a lot of questions about my food, and I was known for throwing down some awesome home-style meals, and so no one wanted to come over for dinner anymore, and I was like, you know what? We're still gonna eat good, and just bring over some fresh fruits and veggies and stuff, and I will throw down, and you can watch me. So I have these vegan potlucks, but it's mostly people bringing me the items, and I prepare it for them and show them, and then we all eat together.
I love that. Yeah. Oh, that's so fun.
I also take people to the grocery store too. Like, I've taken about 4 of my friends and family members last week to some local places where they can buy organic things and natural things to cook in the kitchen. And
so you're helping people, not just letting them eat with you, which is of course super fun and what we love to do here, but you're teaching them.
I'm showing them how to do it at home so they can do it themselves. And my phone is full of pictures of text messages from my family and friends of the dinners that they're making at home.
I
saying,
love
like,
that.
So proud, like, look what I made for dinner, and everybody loves it, and it makes me so happy.
That's the best. And you know what I love about what you're doing is that you do so many different forms of activism in all of these ways, right? And I think cooking, as we know here, is definitely a form of activism, and it helps to show people that this stuff isn't hard, and it's really delicious. And so I get to have you eat my food today, so you get a break from cooking. So. Yes. Because it's the fall, as you know, best season, we did a kind of fall football food inspired dishes today. So this is a beer and cheese soup. All right. And then here we have some buffalo wings with a sriracha apricot sauce. Oh my God. So I'm going to get started on the soup, so you can try and tell me what you think. Okay.
Oh my gosh. It tastes so cheesy.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Right. And not only, there's no tofu in it, so that's really good. The creaminess is from beans.
Oh my gosh, this is so good.
Yeah, it's good, right? Do you want to try the buffalo wings?
Yeah.
All right.
I want one that's covered. And this one's got it looks like it has a piece of apricot on it.
Ooh, there you go. Kind of tangy and spicy. That means a lot coming from a lady who cooks really well herself. So thank you. I'm so glad you were here, Yvonne, and you do so much in the community, and I love that. So get active, get involved, and join us next time on Save the Kales.